Yep, I am. Are you seeing somebody else besides me?
Yeah.
No, only me. And you. That makes two of us. Okay. Wat denkt men nog? Nog niet. Ik ga aanvangen dan de share to the computer. Ready? Wat? Laat het, is oké. Die laatste sterk kan blijven. Is oké. There you go. Ik kan zeggen fijn. Maar wat van het? Oké. Laat het hier af, is oké. Ik ga bad ook in. Kom maar zitten, ga weg. Mag ze geheimisch. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. It's another week, and it's a special day today. Please have a seat. Please come to all. For those of us who are joining us on Zoom, on YouTube, and of course, those of us who are here live on this very first morning, a very special week. And we are grateful to Hashem for all the good things that He is bestowing upon us. But, good morning, Malcolm. Welcome aboard. Have a seat. How are you?
Morning.
Good morning, Malcolm. Can you hear us?
I can hear you, yes.
Oh, I'm glad to hear. I'm glad to hear that I can hear you too. What's going on? How was Shabbos?
Okay, but I've just started coughing for some reason.
Oh no.
But I'm okay.
Through the wires. Have I?
Pardon?
I've not sent you any sort of viruses, chas v'shalom, through the wire.
No, but you sent me a message last night.
Correct.
After Shabbos, I got that.
Very good, and we're glad to see you. If you're coughing, you want to have yourself some lemon tea. Not that you need my ideas. I'm sure you've got it all figured out. The lemon tea is supposed to be very good for a cough.
Right, well, I'm here today. Now, that I'm missing for the next 3 Sundays.
Oh, wow. Are you going to be anywhere nice?
Yes. Right. Next Sunday, I'm going to Blackpool till the Friday. Come back Friday. On the Sunday, I'm going down to Norwich that way. Sorry, the Norfolk Broads.
Oh, very good. How do you get around? Do you drive?
Well, I'm driving to Blackpool, but I'm going on a coach by coach down south.
Wow. That's very brave. You wear a mask maybe on the coach.
Yes.
Yeah, that's very good. Very good. Fantastic. You'll have a grand time. You'll have a grand time.
I hope so.
So when are you actually going to Blackpool?
Next Sunday morning, early.
Fantastic. So after the 9 days are finished and the whole Tisha B'Av,
Yes.
and then we'll go from there. Brilliant.
Yes.
I'm very
So
happy
the 9
for
days
you.
finish on Thursday, so I can cut my hair on Friday.
In time for Shabbos, and then you're off you go.
I'm off to go, yes.
Fabulous. Very good. You're looking healthy though. Baruch Hashem. Aside, I don't see you coughing, which is also good.
Yeah.
And you're looking healthy. And Bez Hashem, have a good time.
Yeah, but how about you and your family? Are you all well?
Thank the good Lord, Baruch Hashem. So much to be grateful for. The children have just finished school. So now they're going to start like some sort of summer schedule, which has been a bit tricky to figure out. But you know what? Baruch Hashem, we're healthy. Baruch Hashem, everyone's excited about good things that are hopefully going to come.
Yeah.
And we're looking forward to even more good things. Please God.
Oh, very good. Let's hope so.
Bez Hashem. So I'm going to get started. We're going to do the shir. And Bez Hashem will learn a few inspiring things. And that'll have to last you, Malcolm, for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, until you're back in town. But
right.
In the meantime, we're going to do a little bit what's going on in this week's Jewish calendar, a little bit what's going on this week's Parshah, and then a practical lesson that we can take away from it and help us journey through these difficult times of the 9 days over through Tisha B'Av, and then of course into practical life as well. So the Jewish calendar today is very, very special because it's the yard site of a tremendously famous Kabbalist who lived just over 400 years ago in Sfas, the Arizal. The Yitzchak Gloria, today is his yard site, a very special day, and the Arizal, the Ari HaKadosh, was one of the major turning points in when the secrets of Torah were not only made known that they exist, but also taught so that everybody could benefit from the wellsprings of the deeper parts of the Torah. So much so that the Arizal is quoted to have said, "Mitzvah legalus zos hachachma." Today, it's an instruction. It's incumbent upon us to share and to inspire ourselves and others through this tremendous depth that's been made available to us. And today, being his yard site, which is also the day in which he shared a lot of his teachings, were shared towards the end of his life, and that's what we're very grateful for. And of course, it's a tremendously energized day because it gives us that bracha. That's today. It happens to be that this week is also, for 2 other reasons, very special. Of course, with Tisha B'Av coming up on Thursday, and Thursday being Tisha B'Av, it's the saddest day in the Jewish calendar. But equally, we're waiting for when it becomes not only a happy day, but the happiest day on the Jewish calendar when Mashiach comes. And that's a very important bit of Tisha B'Av, where we remind ourselves of what we lost, and therefore encourage ourselves to reinstate this loss by making Mashiach happen. And then, of course, by the time we get past Tisha B'Av, in this coming Shabbos will be the first of 7 Shabbosim between Tisha B'Av and Rosh Hashanah. And this is the Shabbosim of comforting. And this Shabbos will be called Shabbos Nachamu. Why is it Shabbos Nachamu? Because the Haftarah it starts off with Nachamu, Nachamu Ami. Hashem is comforting the Jewish people. But the comfort is the comfort over the loss of the destruction of Beis Hamikdash. Right away on Shabbos, you read a special Haftarah that is about comforting. So this Shabbos will be not only a Shabbos that's past the 9 days, but it's a Shabbos that's already starting to mend the loss of the 9 days, and it's counterparts in everybody's personal life. So it's a special week on the Jewish calendar. So we're going to go into what's happening in the Parshah this week. What's happening in the Parshah? What do we remember about Parshah Vaeschanan, Malcolm? What can you tell me about Parshah Vaeschanan? Anything come to mind?
I'd have to look it up first.
Okay, so and I'll save you the hassle. It's famous for the 10 Commandments.
Yeah.
Even though we read the 10 Commandments already all those weeks ago in Parshas Yisro, but now we have this book of Devarim is all Mishnah Torah. It's repetition. But Moshe is revising and going over the past incidents. Yeah. One of the things he revises this week is the 10 Commandments. And another interesting thing that we have in this week's Parshah is the Shema. The portion of Shema, perhaps you could arguably the most important Jewish prayer is in this week's Parshah. So it's a very loaded Parshah. In addition to that, it starts off with the word Vaeschanan. The word Vaeschanan means, and I begged, I beseeched Hashem, Moshe Rabbeinu begged Hashem to allow him to go into Eretz Yisrael. Fortunately, he wasn't given the okay. And the Medrash tells us the reason why he was not given the okay is because he was on a mission. Like every Jewish leader, his mission was to look after his followership. And Moshe's followership was the generation that passed away outside of Israel, all over the 40 years. And Moshe Rabbeinu's mission hadn't finished yet. And he remains outside of Israel until the time that all those who have passed away will come back to life. And Moshe will lead his generation for the first time ever. They will come into Eretz Yisrael because they will also come back to life. So Moshe Rabbeinu is buried by Hashem in an undisclosed location. But what we do know is that it's on the plains of Moab. It's outside of Israel, in what we call today Jordan. And instead of being able to go in, Moshe Rabbeinu is invited by Hashem to go up, to climb the mountain and get a mountain view of across the river. And we know that he was shown not just the land in its geographical place, but also all its future. Moshe Rabbeinu looked into the land of Israel and he saw what would happen in generations and generations to come. And this is the quote of the famous Gemara where Moshe Rabbeinu looked into the future and he saw Rabbi Akiva, who lived almost 1,500 years later. And he sees Rabbi Akiva studying the Talmud and expounding on the words of the Torah to such an enormous level. Moshe Rabbeinu is like, wow, he's ahead of me. It's so intense, the teachings of Rabbi Akiva. Why was he not made to be the person who would receive the Torah? Said Hashem, listen carefully to what he's saying. And Moshe Rabbeinu, in the futuristic vision, sees how one of his students asked Rabbi Akiva, Menalach, from where do you know this halacha? How do you know what you're teaching us? And Rabbi Akiva famously answers his student, Halacha l'Moshe Sinai. This is the halacha that's from a different level beyond us because it's what Moshe Rabbeinu was taught by Hashem in Har Sinai. So even the enormous scholar, Talmud Chacham, Rabbi Akiva, recognized that everything that we learn is how we understand things. But the core, the root, the foundation of everything we learn, the halacha l'Moshe Sinai, comes from a kedusha, from a holiness. And that holiness is what Moshe excelled in. The holiness of being able to climb up the mountain and see Hashem face to face. Go on.
No, carry on.
Okay, no problem. So the one
it's
thing
only me on at the moment.
No. I mean, we have we're live on YouTube, and we also have my son is here listening as well. So I'm talking to you. I'm talking to Mendel. I'm talking to anyone else who's watching. Right. Don't worry. Malcolm, you're a world of beauty. Kanai Nahara, Baruch Hashem. So we have here also how Moshe Rabbeinu reviews with the Jewish people. Don't forget, this is his last month of his life. And he's encouraging the Yidden and he's telling them, we left Mitzrayim together. We all left Egypt. And he reminds them of where we came from and how Hashem took us out. He reminds us of the 10 Commandments in Matan Torah. And he also points out that these two events, Hashem taking the Yidden out of slavery and making them his nation, number one. And number two, the fact that Hashem revealed himself to each and every individual, not just to a prophet, but everyone, the rank and file, the normal people, the regulars, all heard Hashem speaking. Says Moshe Rabbeinu, these two things are unique. And they're not copyable. Nobody can replicate them. And the truth is, throughout history, we've seen how many millions of pounds, so to speak, how much effort other faiths have put into trying to entice Jewish people to drop Yiddishkeit and become Christian, and join their faith, and yet never have they tried to make as if that their prophecy or their starting point is anything other than Yiddishkeit. Because what Yiddishkeit claims, you can't replicate. Nobody can claim that there was 3 million or 2 million people that witnessed a revelation. That's unique to Yiddishkeit. And it always has been. Fascinatingly, it's never been replicated. And in this week's Sedra, Moshe Rabbeinu says to the Jewish people, remember this. Why did Hashem put you through such enormous revelation? The Yiddish people barely could stay alive after that. And the reason is not because Hashem was trying to scare us. The reason is because Hashem was showing us how much He loves us and how much He's giving us the revelation of what it means to see that Hashem is real. And that's in this week's Sedra, where Hashem, Moshe Rabbeinu tells us how lucky we are to be Yidden, how lucky we are to have received the Torah. And with this is how we have the reminiscence of this. Good morning, good morning. Welcome aboard. So we have is, besides for the revising of the Seres HaDibros, the Ten Commandments, and the revising of how we left Mitzrayim, Moshe Rabbeinu also speaks about the future. And says, I see into the future that the Yiddish people are unfortunately going to commit sins, idolatry specifically. And he says, I see in the future the Yiddish people will be thrown out of the land. We'll lose our rights to Eretz Yisrael. Yet, says Moshe Rabbeinu, never give up. Because the Yiddish people, even in Golos, even when we're driven away from our homeland, always have the way back. There's always teshuvah. The person can always reconnect with Hashem, and Hashem won't forsake us. Hashem will welcome us back. So we'll have the idea of geula, of redemption, written into the Torah in this week's Sedra. V'shav Hashem lekeches shvuscha. Hashem will welcome us back. And that's what we're waiting for now, for the time of redemption, especially in the 9 days, which is when we read Parshas Vaeschanan. We have, of course, the Seres HaDibros, which is a highlight. And we have in the Shema a highlight, a number of very important mitzvahs. Of course, starting off with the mitzvah of Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Hashem is one, the unity of Hashem. We have the mitzvah of V'ahavta, to love Hashem. We have the mitzvah of Vaeschanan, of learning Torah, which is a powerful mitzvah. The mitzvah to study, not just in order to know or in order to become a scholar. The mitzvah of spending time learning, beautiful, fantastical mitzvah, which we're doing right now. And then, of course, you have the mitzvah of tefillin. We have the mitzvah of mezuzahs, and all that is packed into our fantastical parsha, Parshas Vaeschanan. Okay, so it's a loaded parsha. It's a special day today, the yard site of the Arizal. And it's also a special week. It's the week of Tisha B'Av, but it's also the Shabbos will be the Shabbos of comfort of Nachamu. Okay, we learned a little something about what we're in. Today I would like to share with you one area of the Parsha, which is very inspirational. Let me just get this slideshow up because I think it'll be a fantastic lesson. Here we go. Share screen. There we go. Shir today is all about topic of organization, making things click. How many times have we discussed, have we talked about important ideas? How many times have we come to a realization, made a firm decision, and yet in one ear, out the other ear? We know the idea, and how many things do we know, but we don't live up to? I just want to put on the screen some interesting things of 2010. How long ago was 2010? 10 years ago. 10 years ago, when iPhones was just being launched. The first iPhones came out around then. And it was at that time where we had, and can you check that this is plugged in, please? It was becoming more and more of an issue that safety of driving whilst using the phone is a serious concern. Thank you, understand. It's a serious concern. And they had at that time one of the largest providers, as in cell phone, mobile networks in America, is a network called AT&T. AT&T till today is one of the biggest ones. I think now they have 160 million users or something across the states. But it's a massive company, and they went on a campaign asking people not to use their mobile phone. Obviously, when they're driving, yeah, they weren't asking people not to use the mobile phone. They want people to use the mobile phone, but they went on a campaign saying we need to stop using our mobile phone when we're driving, and they spent an enormous, astronomical figure of money on the campaign, and the campaign was titled "It Can Wait." It can wait. Whatever text message I need to send urgently, it can wait. No photo or no message is more important than life. And that's the idea that they had. And they had billboards, and they had commercials, and they had pop-ups that would come up on your phone, and all the things. It can wait, it can wait. That was in 2010. And they went all out. The campaign was enormous. It was all over the place. In 2012, 2 years into that campaign, they got, I think through Twitter or something, they did a survey to try and figure out what was the impact, what was the result of their campaign, how well were they doing. Turns out 2 years in, they not only hadn't made it better, but what 2 years earlier 68% of people admitted to using their phone whilst driving. 2 years later 69%. So it only gotten worse statistically. In other words, it was an absolute failed campaign. The millions and billions of dollars that went into trying to get people to refrain from doing something that they know is wrong. Everybody knows how dangerous it is to use a phone whilst driving, because your eyes aren't on the wheel, your eyes aren't on the road. How can you be doing two things? Yet, people did not take it to heart, and it didn't click. If you ask them, should people be texting while they're driving? Absolutely not. Should it be illegal? Yes. Should it be punishable if you get caught? Yes. And what are you doing? I'm texting while I'm driving, or I'm picking up the phone. And it became one of those iconic examples of where somebody knows something that's wrong. It still goes on like a mass. And what we're going to discuss today is how does the Torah, how does Judaism teach us to help us make real change? And it's nuanced, it's fantastic, guaranteed. There's no pill, there's no tablet that you can take and swallow it, and all of a sudden you'll be accepting making major changes. But at least there's a pathway, a set of rules that we can take to help us be able to make things click. And it's very much connected to being human. Human beings, it's just one of those conditions that we're born with. We're born that we have the human condition. And it's hard for us to really take something that's going to change, not just the here and now, but making a long-term change from something that we're comfortably set in our ways is really, really a life challenge. But then closing that gap and from what we believe to make that affect how we behave is very, very Jewish. So many parts of Yiddishkeit rely on that, closing that gap, but encourage us to make that shift. So what we're going to do is we're going to focus on a lesson from this week's Parshah that's going to be a tool for that. But I do want to say, I'm going to try doing a little bit different than we've done in the past. That is, instead of focusing so much on the texts that we have, and there are plenty of texts which we might scroll through, but we're going to focus more on talking about it rather than reading the text inside, although it's nice to read the text inside and see sources, but I think it's a little bit more effective and easier to follow along if it's a conversation rather than me just reading texts out. So again, if anyone has any questions, please do speak up at any time. Do unmute yourself. Keep yourself unmuted if you feel like there's no noise, or if they feel that there is noise, just put yourself on mute and push the space bar, or if you're on the phone, if you need to do *6, and that sort of idea. Let's make it a two-way conversation. We're going to start off with text number one. Text number one, we're not going to read it. It's going to be on the screen. It's a story. It's a story that is from the previous Rebbe, the Rebbe's father-in-law. Now, the Rebbe's father-in-law was an enormous scholar, and he put all his scholarship aside. And instead, he was challenged at the time where he had to go even to teach little children under the communist regime. There was no one around. There were no teachers. Everyone had fled. And therefore, he recognized that the human needs aren't always just to hear speeches and drushes. Sometimes we've got to be far more practical than that. And a lot of his teachings, even before that, but certainly following that, focused not so much on the intellectual, academic side of Torah, which is beautiful, but he strongly also were part of that was also the practical application of all the fantastical things that we know about. A lot of what Hasidic teachings teach are based on the Arizal's teachings, which today is his yard site. By the way, I think there's a number of 27,000 mentions, quotes, times that the Arizal's quoted throughout Hasidic teachings. That's an enormous number. That's an astronomical number. 27,000 times that Arizal's quoted throughout Hasidic teachings. But today we're going to be learning about a story of this sort of idea. The story is about how the Friedrich Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, is told about a particular individual who would daven special. We all know that davening is longer on Shabbos than it is during the week. But on Shabbos, you can do Shabbos davening quickly, or you can daven Shabbos davening slowly. And even in slowly, there are many different ways you can daven slowly. How long should a good Shabbos davening take? No? How long should davening take in shul? Help me out.
Minimum 2 hours.
Minimum 2 hours?
Yeah.
Malcolm, what do you say?
Easy now. You can do it in an hour and a half, an hour and three quarters.
An hour and a half, an hour and three quarters. Minimum 2 hours. No, Jeffrey, what do you say?
Yeah, I think you can. I mean, we've been locked down, mind you. It's probably about an hour and a half. But it depends. Like yesterday, we were in shul, and we actually only davened from Shochai. It was about just under 2 hours. It depends. At home, you can daven quicker. In the shul, depends on where you go to. If you go to a mainstream United shul, it can go on forever because they cut the center up, which is the best. So I think what Malcolm said, an hour and a half.
Depends who's doing the davening.
Yeah, depends who's doing the davening. Okay. Sorry?
I mean, I talked to Vaeschanan, and I used to go to it in the morning, at Shabbos morning. They started at 7:30.
Yeah.
We were drinking about 9:15. So, and they were really pushing it quickly. So if you use them as a benchmark, whatever 7:30 is to 9:15, now 3/4 is probably the fastest you can do it. And they were davening fast.
Okay. So one variable is who's the chazan. So if you've got a chazan who likes to hear his voice, he might take a little longer if it's a choir or a drasha. There's another variable, which is also, what do we have waiting for us? Is there a good kiddush afterwards? If there's a good kiddush, it could be takes a little faster. If there's no kiddush and no one's in any rush, and maybe it takes a little longer. You never know what could be. But here we're going to learn something else. In Hasidic teachings, davening at home takes longer, not shorter. Why? What's the idea? How can it take longer? In shul, you've got the chazan, you've got the repetition, you've got the laning. It takes longer.
I know why.
Go on.
Because you're more relaxed and you're taking your time.
Boom. You're a chassid. You're a chassid. You're not keeping up with anybody. And I'm not keeping up. In other words, I don't have to keep up to the chazan. And B, if I'm more relaxed, like you said, I can actually spend time and say what I really mean. I can find expression in the words of davening to express how I really feel. That, in Hasidic lingo, is called davening ba'avodah. Avodah means work, service. So when I don't just say the words, but I actually connect, I put my heart into it, I feel what I'm saying, that's like considered a very ideal way to daven. Now, it's not all or nothing. The Hasidim would say, every time I daven a different paragraph. They would say the whole davening, they say all the words, but they choose one paragraph or one chapter that they want to say, and this chapter they're going to say with meaning. Now, for the great scholars amongst them, it could take hours, because as they say each word, That's one pasuk in Ashrei. But there's so much depth, and you can expound on the loaded verse. You could spend 20 minutes, half an hour on that one pasuk, just meditating and connecting, thinking about it. You could. For maybe perhaps somebody's a little bit more simple or not so educated in that sense. So you say it slowly and you say the words with meaning and with heart. But davening b'avodah could easily take 5-6 hours for the Hasidic Jew. 5-6 hours when they're not in shul. Or so they might sit in shul and hear the minyan and then go home and continue. It sounds idealistic. It sounds like from a different world. But the truth is we could do it as well, not for 6 hours, but we could do it for an extra 10 minutes. We put 10 minutes on top of what we're doing, and during this 10 minutes, still extra. Mendel, finished. And thank. You can hear it now. So this is the idea of davening slowly. Now, the story that the previous Rebbe got was a story of a very simple person. Not only simple because he hadn't studied Torah, but a simple person because he'd never studied anything. And what was amazing about this fellow was that he would daven very slowly every Shabbos. And it went on for 40 years. And it was after 40 years that someone approached him and said to him, what are you spending all that time doing? What are you doing for so long? What are you doing with a sitter for more than 3 hours? What can you say? You're saying the words twice? What are you doing for so long? And he replied that what was taking me so long is a famous lesson that I once heard from one of the Rebbes. But I don't know the full understanding of what it means. But to me, this is what it sounded like. And I think about it the entire davening. And the more I think about it, the more I feel close to Hashem. And I don't want to finish. I don't want to end. What was the teaching that he heard? It's actually a quote from regarding this week's Parshah. As we said, in this week's Sedra, we have the 10 Commandments repeated. But there are a few changes. The way that Aseret Adibris, the 10 Commandments, are written in the first time round of Parshas Yisro, and the way they're written in this week's Parshah. One of the most famous changes is the mitzvah of keeping Shabbos. So the first time round it says, Zocher es Yom HaShabbos lekatshai, remember Shabbos to keep it holy. Zocher es Yom HaShabbos. And in this week's Sedra, it says about keeping Shabbos. It doesn't say the word remember. It doesn't say Zocher. It says instead, Shomer, guard Shabbos to keep it holy. So is it about remembering Shabbos to keep it holy? Or is it about guarding Shabbos? Now, it doesn't seem so different. You got to remember Shabbos, you got to guard Shabbos. But actually, there's a tremendous difference. Is it a positive mitzvah? Or is it a prohibition? Zachor v'shamar. Asher, what do you tell me? What can you tell me about Zachor v'shamar?
Zachor v'shamar, they have to be together they work together. They have to be together. You have to remember Shabbos.
This is our Arizal talking. 2 things for Shabbos, but in general, yes. The Talmud tells us that although there's 2 quotes in the Torah about what the wording of the Aseret Adibris are, now clearly Hashem said the Aseret Adibris. So which one did he say? Did he say Zachar or did Hashem say Shomer? What did Hashem actually say? Which one's the right quote and which one's the misquote or the tweaked up quote? And what's the answer? Zachor v'shamor b'dibur echad. We say this in Lachadod. Zachor v'shamor b'dibur echad. Both words were both said by Hashem simultaneously. Simultaneously, when Hashem said the Aseret Adibris, we can't imagine this because we're either saying one word or we're saying a different word. But Hashem did the impossible. And he said 2 things at once, and we heard both. We heard both. And then we stop and think, hold on a second, how do we hear both? And the answer is Hashem did a miracle. He said, Zocher es Yom HaShabbos and Shomer es Yom HaShabbos in the same speech, in the same breath. So, as Asher's saying, that teaches us that we have to do both, and they're both equal. But Zocher and Shomer are 2 things. So that's the quote from the Talmud. Zocher and Shomer v'dibur echad nemru. Zocher and Shomer, remember Shabbos and guard Shabbos, was said as one. That's the Talmud. Comes along the Kabbalah and says, actually, that quote from the Talmud isn't just to recognize them both. It's much deeper than that. Zocher v'shomer, remember and guard, v'dibur, whenever you're speaking, echad, Hashem. One is Hashem. So it's a little bit of a spin on words, a play on words, but remember and guard that whatever you're saying, whatever's going on, echad. Zachar v'shamar b'dibor. Remember and guard that when you're talking, echad. It should always be one. How do you like that? Good idea? It's a good little Hasidic interpretation, if you like.
Yeah, but I'm trying to understand. Remembering Hashem. Where is Shamar?
Shamar is guard. Remember and guard that whatever you say.
God, yes.
Guard and remember whatever you say to make sure that it's always connected to the one Hashem. So that's a play on words. But this individual, this simple guy, heard his teacher, his mentor say this, and it meant so much to him. For 40 years, he would think about one little idea. Come on, big deal. Oh, cute. Not for him. For him, it was a lifelong meditation. And he would meditate about it more and more and more. And it put him on fire. So that 38, 39, 40 years later, he still can't get enough out of davening because he feels so close to Hashem of one simple meditation. That was the story that the previous Rebbe heard and felt like he wanted to share. He wrote it down in his Sefer HaSichos, his book of teachings. He wrote down the story as a teaching to share with others. What was he hoping to impart? That we should know sometimes new information helps us. Sometimes it's not about getting a new idea. It's about spending time with an old idea and thinking about it and letting it sink in. And then thinking about it again and letting it sink in even more. And the more time I let it become part of me, the more I connect with the idea, the more it becomes me. And it's not something that I choose to do. This becomes almost second nature to me. So I want to put two words in Yiddish out there, but please, if anyone has any suggestions or questions or examples of this, speak up, tell me. I'd love to hear from you. There's a word in Yiddish which is herring. Herring is not herring, because herring's a food, but herring, it means to hear. Hear you. If someone says to you, I hear you, what do they mean? I just gave you a whole drasha, and you respond to me, I hear you. What do you mean?
That you've heard all what he said.
Yeah.
We've been listening to you.
I've listened. Now, it could be that it went in one ear, it went out the other ear, but I heard. And then there's a deeper idea, and that is in Yiddish, the word, I don't know how you say it in English, it's probably a good word in English also, but the word in Yiddish is der Herren. There's Herren and der Herren. It's like almost like you became a hearer. And not only you heard, my being was that I became a listener. Maybe the difference between hearing and listening? What's the difference between hearing, listening and hearing? Is there a difference? I don't know.
There is a difference. I think maybe because you are actually focused on what is said.
Okay.
So, hearing it and it's going out to the ear, but you're listening to it, you're focused and you know exactly what's being said.
Processing it. Okay. So maybe the hearing's a little bit more beyond that. A little bit more beyond that. Because even when I'm listening to something, I hear a nice share from the Rav. Went to shul this week, or I didn't go to shul this week. Heard him on YouTube, heard him on Facebook. I listened, and it made sense to me. And my conclusion was, wow, that's a great idea. That's listening. That's listening. Because hearing means I sat there at the computer, and it was the noise was coming into my head, my brain was processing it, and I finished, and I didn't even say that was a good idea. I just switched off. That's hearing. Listening is that I come to a conclusion. But there's a step after that as well. And that's what we're looking at. This is the concept of der Herren. Now, I want to put it into the Parshah because it's amazing how it works in the Parshah. In this week's Parshah, we read about the Aseres HaDibros. These are the words, God spoke these words to your entire assembly at the mountain out of the midst of the fire, the cloud, the opaque darkness, with a great voice, which did not cease. And he inscribed them on 2 stone tablets and gave them to me. Now, this quote is often used to point out that the tablets came after the spoken law, which helps us emphasize, remember, that Torah Sheba'al Peh, the spoken Torah, predates, comes first, and is the basis for Torah Shebechtav, for the written Torah, which is usually the opposite that we usually think. But here I want to point out the part which is in bold, because there was a fantastic, great voice which did not stop, did not cease. And the Midrash asks, what's with this description of the voice? Yes, we know it was a powerful voice that Hashem spoke in, but what does it mean, V'lo Yosaf? It did not stop. What didn't stop? The voice is still going on now? What does it mean that the voice did not end? It's a bit vague what it means. So Rashi points out that when human beings speak, you need to catch your breath. You need to pause in between. And Hashem didn't pause for breath. It was a one long talk that had no breaks in it because it was godliness. It's impossible for a human being to say that many verses without breathing in between. But Hashem's not human. Says Rashi, this is what it means. V'lo Yosaf, it did not stop. It went straight the way through. But the Midrash says, V'lo Yosaf didn't stop. 3 other types of commentaries. Let's just read this very quickly. This is the last quote we'll read. God spoke these words to your entire assembly with a great voice which did not cease. 3 explanations as to what V'lo Yosaf doesn't mean. Vaeschanan said, the one voice split into 7 voices, which then split into 70 languages. And therefore, V'lo Yosaf doesn't mean it didn't stop hearing. It didn't stop being applied. So that anybody who understood any language, not just Hebrew, not just Ivrit, Lashon HaKodesh, whatever language a person understood, they heard it in the language that made sense to them. It's almost like a Google voice. It's not Google, it's Hashem, where it just spits it out, it just says it, it's heard, it's understood, it's taken in whatever language your processor handles. So one of the amazing feats of Matan Torah was Hashem didn't just say the words that people could hear, but it was like a dynamic, living speech. Teaching number 1. Number 2, Rabbi Shimon bar Lakish said, every prophet throughout history has prophesied from this voice. In other words, the voice continues till today. It's a living voice that not only exists for every person, it exists for every time. And then there's the third pshat, which I want to talk about today. The third idea that the Medrash says is, the rabbi said it was a voice that had no end, it didn't stop, because it did not have an echo. The voice didn't rebound. So the voice traveled. Usually when sound travels, and it travels until it hits a barrier and then rebounds. And this voice didn't stop. It didn't get stuck anywhere. It just kept on going. Echoes usually work when the voice hits a barrier and has to stop and therefore rebounds. Says the Medrash, this voice, the voice of the 10 Commandments, did not have an echo. Which one of these 3 lessons fit best for you? What do you think is the most powerful of these 3 ideas? 70 languages throughout history, no echo. What would you say is the most fascinating of the 3?
No echo, the one that stays with you.
No echo. I was going to say
one that stays with you.
I was going to say the middle one, the one that exists throughout history. What we're saying is that Hashem's voice from 3,000 years ago is still ringing. And for those who can tap into it, those who are prophets, can hear it till today. That's enormous. That means that we, in 2020, in the Hebrew year of 5780, are still living in a time of the giving of the Torah. That's uplifting. What would you say, Malcolm?
Sounds like we're living in the past.
It sounds like, is that a good thing?
Yes and no.
Okay. Yes and no. I'm going to focus on the yes side, but I do want to add that if Hashem's voice spoke relevant information 3,000 years ago, and it's speaking till today, Hashem's voice is speaking relevant information to 2020, to us.
I think it still is speaking at the moment in different ways.
Right. Oh, I was hoping someone would say that. Oh,
He is. He's sending signs, not in the way that we see in the language we understand, with COVID and other things that's going on, and it's been going on for centuries. We send a message out to our own people and other communities around the world. God's not. He doesn't speak in the language we understand. He sends it in signs, a bit like the cloud when the Israelites were wandering in the desert. There was a cloud up there. It wasn't in words. It was a sign.
Oh, what's the quote from the Talmud? Does Hashem have a mouth with which he talks words? Talking is communicating, sharing information, sharing confidence. Malcolm, what were you saying?
Well, I was just thinking then that the way Jeff has just explained with, the way Hashem was sending messages, as if, we were all deaf and dumb, but could understand the signs.
There you go. We can understand the signs in that deaf and dumb in this sense. But I'm gonna ask a question on a third explanation, because not only isn't it not necessarily the most wowing one, it actually seems to be minimizing the sound of the voice. The point the verse is trying to say is such a powerful voice, it goes on to every individual, whatever language you speak, or whichever generation you're in. But how does no echo emphasize how great Hashem's voice is? It almost sounds like Hashem's voice wasn't loud, and that's why there's no echo. And the question is, number one, why would Hashem downgrade or downplay his voice? Number two, why would Hashem make a miracle of no echo? What's the point? I mean, we can understand the miracle of everybody understanding it. We can understand the miracle of it going on, signs throughout the generations. But why would Hashem orchestrate just what's the point? And then, of course, what's the lesson for us? How does it help us? How does it make us more connected? How does it make us a better person? What use is it of this miracle of no echo? So no echo seems to be downplaying the voice. No echo seems to be a stupid miracle. Well, not stupid, but we don't understand why it's a point. What's the point of such a miracle? And then, of course, what's the lesson that can help us learn? And the answer is going to be that actually an echo means that something is not absorbing the sound, and therefore the sound is rebounding. And the Midrash is trying to tell us that when Hashem spoke the Ten Commandments, it wasn't a miracle that there was no echo. It was just that every item, even the inanimate item, the rocks, the trees, money, whatever existed, absorbed the godliness, absorbed the sign, absorbed the demonstration of Hashem. There was no rebound, not because it was a quiet voice, but because the voice worked. It resonated, and every item in the world, even the inanimate, even the non-moving objects, even the things that are growing or not growing, wasn't just human beings that got it. Everything about the creation recognized and absorbed and took in that Hashem is talking and giving us instruction. That Hashem is giving us a vote of confidence. Why is that important? Because when a person realizes that even the inanimate object absorbs and can absorb, it's a very interesting idea. Marie, I think it is. I don't know how you pronounce this. Marie Konrad, there's a method not too long ago about how a person should tidy up. Whole idea, you got to commit yourself and you imagine an ideal lifestyle, the whole business, and tidy up by category. And the bottom line is the last step of the journey of how you tidy up according to this way of thinking. You Google it. It's like a whole guru concept. Is you've got to ask yourself, does this item that you want to keep spark joy for you? Then you can keep it. And if not, you've got to get rid. Don't keep things that are not bringing you joy. And the whole idea is that the inanimate object that you have, so if you're going to decide whether or not you're going to keep a exercise bike, I don't know, a computer, whether you're going to keep a couch or not in your house, it depends on whether you feel joy when you keep it. Oh, this is something that makes me happy, I'll keep it. Why? Because if not, then the object feels like it has no place in. And part of this guru's idea is that in order to stay tidy, you've got to have a working relationship with all the items in your house. Now, it sounds as crazy as it sounds. The Talmud seems to indicate that you can make a relationship with an inanimate object. There are a number of quotes which we could read, or just to put them on the screen here. Number one, you have here the staff, a stick that Ramea used. When his student would hold it in his hands, he would feel smart because the staff was saturated with his teacher's teachings. You have a similar kind of thing where you have here the beams of a person's house become dignified when a person behaves in a modest way in their own house. You know, and all these sorts of ideas where people would ask to be buried in a coffin that was made of the wood of their own table, their desk where they sat and studied, or the desk where they had worked, so that the goodness of their life, which had been invested into the inanimate table, is a good aura, has goodness to it. That sort of idea where you can change a non-living item, but you can infuse it with goodness, that sort of idea is brought down in Yiddishkeit. It's brought down in Talmudic teachings. What's the significance of that? It's teaching me that we can affect, we can change the things in our life. When did that start? When did it become normal or possible for us to change items, things, through what we do with them? I'll just give you a classic example where it doesn't work. Does your computer become cleverer if you do more Wikipedia searches on it? Once the computer's finished and you're not using it anymore, it's a hunk of tin. It's a piece of metal, and it goes straight into the garbage can, into the metal recycling. It's not become any cleverer because you've used it for clever things. Does a mirror become a better looking mirror because you looked into it and you're good looking? No, it does not. It doesn't change because you used it. Yet for some reason, when we use your tefillin to do a mitzvah, my tefillin have become holy. How does that happen? Because one of the things that the Torah gift is that we can actually change and affect material items by doing goodness with them. We can actually...
I don't know why, dear Rabbi, I'm relating it to Shirat HaBriah, the song of creation.
Yes, where creation sings songs to Hashem, but that's the creation from their point. What we're saying is that we can actually change the object's spirituality by depending on how we use them. That's the idea. So now, if that's the case, that we can affect the items in our house, the items that we have, the items that we use, then certainly we can change ourselves. We can infuse ourselves with a new reality. How do we do that? This is the concept of deherim. Not just to hear things, and not only just to listen to things, but to allow things to have an effect on me. And that is done through spending time on it. Let's just say I have now an inspiration. I've been to the Rob's Shir, I've davened a little bit, or I've just seen a miracle. I've just heard a good news. So-and-so was so ill with COVID, and now they've become better. I want to do something. I want to become a better person. I want to show my appreciation. Or putting a strict spirit of religion aside, I realize how precious my family is. I want to do something to reach out to my sister, to my brother, to my wife, to my son, to my, whoever it is, my neighbor. I want to do something extra. And it's an inspirational moment. What's going to allow that to have a real change of long term? So it's not just that I listen to it, but I daher it. It changes me. And the answer is to let it become more important to me and more important to me. And I should reawaken the thought process with time. Give myself time to invest into it. That is tremendously important. So that the sound Hashem spoke, permeated, went into every item and changed it. We need to do the same thing with what we hear and listen to. Let it become part of me. Let it become part of me. There's another beautiful idea where it says, V'hoya Ekev Tishma, in the beginning of next week's Sedra, even to the heel, the toe of where I am, all of me should be invested. This sort of concept is the idea of being able to become deherim. Now, I've been personally to many Fabrengens, Hasidic gatherings, where the focus is just no new information, no new data. It's just allowing the information that we know already to become once again to the forefront and hearing it over again. And when I allow myself to think about it over again, it's not that I'm going to know new things, but more of me is going to get to know it. It's going to change more of me. And as I do that over and over again, that's how I become connected. This is what we're learning today. And today we're learning that the lesson we have of how Hashem gave us the 10 Commandments wasn't just novel information. If anything, the 10 Commandments are pretty basic. Don't kill. Don't steal. Don't worship an idol. So most of it we knew already, if not all of it. It wasn't about new information. The method was so special. And the method was, when we hear something and we listen to it, let it be absorbed. And the only way to do that is to allow it to have time, more time, and be comfortable, not just with saying, oh, give me something new. Not about something new. I want to connect with something. Be present with it. Allow yourself to connect with it. And this sort of idea is so, so special. Allowing something to be absorbed, that's one of the reasons why we daven. When we're davening, we're not learning anything new because we're saying the exact same words we said yesterday and the day before. So why are we davening over again? This is what we're doing. The Heron. We're trying to allow the connection we have with Hashem to be connected. I think we learned something. If you have any questions, more to share, but I wish everybody the courage to be able to connect and reach into deeply, and then Be'ezus Hashem, we will feel for what we're doing so much stronger. Be'ezus Hashem, I do want to give the Birchas Kohanim, but I want to say for the next 3 or 4 weeks, when my children are off school, I have to check, I think it's 4 weeks off school, we're not going to have the Sunday morning shir, but Be'ezus Hashem, Bli Neder, I will send out an email and a WhatsApp writing to everybody when we're getting restarted. Just with the kids off school, it gets a little hectic preparing the shir and giving the shir. But Be'ezus Hashem, please do continue learning Torah, and don't use this as an excuse to not have a Sunday morning booster. Bli Neder, Be'ezus Hashem, we should be healthy. We should have a healthy summer, a relaxing summer, a rejuvenating summer, and it should be summer that will bring us much good news. I wish everyone well, and thank you very much for joining this morning. Again, if you have any questions, please stay on and I'll try and answer. I wish everybody a gesunte Zuma and a birchas koyin medaber and denel mosh leim medaber lahan ramon leimer kusevorchas bnei Yisrael melhem yivarecha adonai v'yishmerecha yair adonai panav lecha v'choneka yisod adonai panav lecha v'yisemech shalom v'som shmi al bnei Yisrael v'ani avarachem. Thank you for joining, everybody. Have a wonderful week. Be well, be safe. Have a good time, Malcolm, on your trips. And everyone else, if you can, if anyone wants to touch base for a one-to-one, we could, in theory, meet up at the Chabad Center if you want. But if not, we can do it on Zoom at any time, any place. Just give me a message. I'm happy to get involved.
Okay, take care, Rabbi. Thank you very much.
Be well. Thank you for joining. Kol tov.